So imagine this. Your team is in shambles, desperately looking for a way to climb out of the cellar of the NFC East. What do? Well, if you're the New York Giants, you pay your inconsistent quarterback $40 million a year and let your only good player leave to your division rival. Sounds like a plan, right? Saquon Barkley, a name synonymous with hope for Giants fans. Well, not anymore at least. Saquon has been an elite running back for the past 6 years now. If it weren't for injuries, he would be averaging over 1,000 yards a season. He's had many ups and downs, but when he's been healthy, he's been the Giants' best player. This guy isn't just a player. He's a game changer. And now, he's about to change the game for the Eagles. But let's rewind. How did we get here? After the very poor 2023 season, Saquon continued to state that he wants to be a Giant for life. He wanted to be in the likes of all the Giant greats. But at the end of the day, the NFL is a business. These players have families to support, and they are humans outside of football. So Saquon ended up entering the free agency market to test if the Giants were going to pay him. Lo and behold, they didn't. Giants GM Joe Schoen believed they were overpaying him, yet they are paying a quarterback a stupid amount of money to miss open wide receivers. This is where things got interesting, because the team that went out and took a reach for him was the Eagles. Yes, the same Eagles that have cooked the Giants twice a year for what feels like an eternity for Giants fans. Speaking of fans, the Giants got absolutely torched on all forms of social media and became the punching bag of the internet. I mean, that's what happens when you lose a guy like this. Well, they didn't just lose him, they let him go to a division rival. Now, Saquon got a lot of backlash from Giant fans, and if I were a Giant fan, I would bash him too. Tiki Barber had some words to say on a podcast.
Don't say it. You're dead to us, Saquon. Good luck, you're dead to me.
In which Saquon ripped him for. This really makes you question the claim Saquon made about being a Giant for life, considering he went to a rival team without hesitation. But hey, if I saw that kind of money, I wouldn't be very hesitant either. After all those years, you leave just like that to a division rival, but not just a division rival, your worst division rival. The whole Eagles franchise doesn't have a good reputation, and I'm not a big fan of them either. Their fan base is kind of scummy, and they seem to have a lot of unloyal players. But at the end of the day, every NFL player's dream is to win the Super Bowl. It's the biggest prize in the game. And considering how good this Eagles team is, he finally has a chance. Even some of the greatest running backs of all time have never won just because they were loyal to a bad team. Barry Sanders, LaDainian Tomlinson. Being loyal cost them. Everybody wants to be loyal, but there's an unfortunate reality. Nevertheless, this makes the Eagles' offense an absolute weapon. That wide receiver core, paired with Jalen Hurts and Saquon in the backfield, is just dangerous. Now, we all saw what happened last year. The Eagles were 11-1 heading into Week 13, looked like the division favorites, and went on to lose 5 of their last 6, eventually losing to Tampa Bay in the wild card. But this was largely due to the gaps in their secondary on defense. They were fraudulent to begin with. Now let's address the elephant in the room.
Elephant in the room, I got a haircut.
Injuries. Saquon is very injury prone and tore his ACL back in 2020. He has battled multiple ankle injuries. Not to mention, he's been in the league for 6 years, which is considered on the older side for a running back. Social media has paid a lot of attention to this and is saying that he's just going to get hurt again. I understand the concern. I could be 100% wrong. On paper, it sounds foolish for the Eagles to spend a bunch of money on a 27-year-old back. I get it. This type of money isn't given to running backs. But this story sounds very familiar. Christian McCaffrey's situation almost mimics Saquon's. He got drafted in 2017 by the Panthers. He tore it up for a couple of years, but a series of injuries combined with his age made the Panthers decide to let him go. Then, a 49ers team who were looking for a playmaker went out and got one. And let's just say he made a little bit of a difference. The Niners took the risk, got their guy, and it paid off a ton for them. He is the focal point of the offense. He led the league in rushing yards with almost 1,500 yards and was tied with former Niners Raheem Mostert for touchdowns with 21 each, the only stats that matter for a running back. If the Eagles use Saquon, like the Niners use McCaffrey, this could be quite the year for Philadelphia. Now for Saquon, his stats don't really show the whole picture. He's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, most notably in 2022 when he had a little more than 1,300, but injuries held him back in a lot of seasons. If you watched any Giant games over the past few years, though, it's not hard to tell who the playmaker of the team was. Hint, it's not Daniel Jones. These guys are 1 year apart, and age wasn't a factor for McCaffrey. In fact, he only suffered 2 minor injuries with the Niners so far and has barely missed any games. Not to mention, he is the best back in the league, and I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Saquon could have the type of impact that McCaffrey had on the Niners. You could argue that Saquon has an even better chance to succeed because of the quarterback situation. Brock Purdy is an elite QB. That's not even up for debate, but he's a pocket passer. With Jalen Hurts and his ability to run, that makes it so much harder for defenses to pick up what the Eagles are going to do next. The Eagles staff want to use Saquon like McCaffrey. In years past, they never really used their running backs. Last year, for example, they barely even used DeAndre Swift, who is a very talented running back. The Niners were the exact same way. They had solid running backs, but they never really used them. Look at Raheem Mostert. He's a blur to most Niners fans, but now he's an absolute beast at Miami. The running back position is in a very weird spot in the NFL. If you have a good one, you're going to use him a lot. But if he's just your average back, he probably won't see that many carries in a game. Considering not a single team drafted a running back in the first round this year, it just shows that teams are more focused on other things, and it makes sense. If you draft a running back in the first round, he's good for 3 years, and then he slows down production and just rots out, which is usually the case. That was really not that great of a pick. Running backs are interchangeable for most teams, but if you catch one at their prime, they are absolute weapons. And I think the Eagles got Saquon at the perfect time. I think they can squeeze a couple of years out of him. Now, let's talk about the Giants. The team that decided to let go of their best player was the right move. The Giants are a hard team to watch. There's almost nothing exciting about their team other than their pick in Malik Nabers, who could very well end up being the best wide receiver out of that draft class. They continue to make moves and pay people when it doesn't make sense. They've been mediocre at best other than that 2022 season, but even then, they didn't make it very far in the playoffs. I just don't see this team being good for a while. This is a rebuilding year for them, and nobody is projecting this team to be good after all the roster changes. They somehow managed to lose 2 star players on both sides of the football, Xavier McKinney and Saquon. Daniel Jones being the guy you're relying on is concerning in itself. I feel like this team doesn't have a direction. Every time they develop a player, they end up leaving. The offensive line is downright terrible, and even Giants fans can attest to that. As much as this offensive line sucks, I still think Danny Dimes isn't the guy, and he never will be the guy. I feel like he was a reach of a pick to begin with, and the reactions of Giants fans on draft night say it all.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
I mean, that pick is inexcusable. Half of the people didn't even know who Daniel Jones was until they drafted him. Poor decision-making constantly by this franchise. But this was with the old GM, and maybe they have changed. They were desperate for a quarterback, but this was not the move. And the guy who all Giants fans knew they should have taken goes by the name of Josh Allen. But this Josh Allen is doing pretty good for himself. He had 17.5 sacks last year, tying him for second just behind TJ Watt. Another thing I don't understand is people who always talk about how the Giants are a big market team, but they never go out and buy anyone good during free agency. And if you're not going to pick anyone up during free agency, at least draft someone who produces some sort of value. Even the Lions finally drafted someone good. Maybe I'm just a hater, but the Giants never seem to impress me, and they continue to make decisions that really can't be explained. But nonetheless, this was the same thing the Lions went through, and now they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. So, what do I know? And as for the Eagles, I think they are going to shake up the NFC this year. Last year, they collapsed, but they went out and fixed all of the gaps they had, which every NFL team should. The thing is, about the NFL, nothing is guaranteed. Saquon is a great player, and I believe he's going to completely change this team. But at the same time, you're looking at his history and saying, he's 27, he's injury prone. Who's to say he's not going to get hurt again?